Hello guys, it's DB Grinder here, back at it again with another video, and this time I'm going to be going over every single available top cut deck list from YCS Birmingham. And before we hop into that though, I want to look at the pie chart and look at the little numbers first before we hop into the decks. So we can see Ryzeal was the most popular deck with 25 in top 64, and there's also multiple variants of Ryzeal. Then we can see 16 Malice in top 64. Also, I'm pretty sure all 6 of the Mitsurugi are also just Ryzeal variants, but it's just a different variant. But it's interesting that they just put Ryzeal when there's pure Ryzeal, Ryzeal Fiendsmith, and Ryzeal Mitsurugi. I feel like if we're going to create separate spots for Mitsurugi, we should probably also do that for Fiendsmith Ryzeal. Then we can see Mitsurugi was the 3rd most played. Memento was the 4th most played in Top Cut, which is kind of absurd, to be honest. I would not have expected this. Tenpai was up there. Then we can see, like, 1 Crystron, 1 Despia, 2 Bystial, which I assume is just Bystial Fiendsmith, 1 White Forest, 2 Mermail, and then a Fire King ended up winning the tournament. The only one that topped. Dinkabooey is crazy. But also I would have expected more Mermail. Just because I did see a lot of this deck on DB being played by the Europeans, and I know that there were like a couple good Europeans playing the Mermail deck, like Julius was playing this deck, so I kind of figured this deck would do a little bit better, like in Top Cut, like maybe it would be like farther in Top Cut. I mean, one did make top 4, so like, I mean, that is pretty solid. So looking at the first place list of the Fire King deck, we can see this is just pure Fire King, not trying to throw anything else in there. It's literally just the Fire King engine and then hand traps. I feel like this deck is built pretty solid. I mean, there's like small things that you could think about, like 1-for-1, but is 1-for-1 actually worth it, especially when like Ash and Fua are in the game and being played in everybody's deck. You have Ulcanix that can start, Ponix that can start, Sanctuary, Island, you have 4 pots in your deck. You could also just draw like a weird combination of like Kieran Garunix plus another Fire King, and that also allows you to play. It's very interesting that this deck was able to win the tournament though. Like, I would not have expected this deck to win the tournament. I don't think anybody was expecting this deck to win the tournament. We can also see in the side deck that they played Lancia and they cut the Maul Charmy Meow to play Chaos Hunter, which is something I thought about going into the tournament. But I felt like Meow was necessary because of how popular the Fiendsmith build was getting, which in my tournament experience, I only played against Malice Fiendsmith. I didn't play against any pure Malice. But I side-decked Chaos Hunter and Meow, because I also wanted my Meow to have something to be able to draw into that was good, which was Chaos Hunter. So I side-decked a lot of hate for that deck. But now going on to the next list, this is the 3rd place list. This is just a pure Ryzeal list, which pure Ryzeal was played a lot in this tournament. The list doesn't have anything like too weird in it, like I guess like 2 cross in main deck, but I feel like for pure, like playing 1 to 2 cross isn't that weird. They don't play plugin, which, normally pure plays, but that is also a card that is only like really good if your duo drive resolves, and if your duo drive is resolving, like you're probably winning anyways, because you get the search cross plus probably trap card, or like node or whatever you need in that spot, and that's just like, that's a pretty good end board right there already, just off resolving the duo drive. We can also see that they only play like 2 Detonator, 2 Duo, and they decide to be able to play other stuff in their deck, like Cowboy for Time, Azalea that works well with like Nib and Bystials, side deck just Judgment, doesn't main deck the Strike like we saw Steven Santoli doing. On to the next list now, we have the 4th place Mermail deck list, which this does remind me a lot of how Julius's deck looked. I don't know exactly what his deck list is, but we've seen him play a lot of DB recently. And he also plays the Glutonius in the deck, which I think this card is extremely powerful, because if you're able to go King into this, like, the game's just over. It almost just feels like you win instantly. But to be fair, whenever this resolves, it almost feels like you win instantly. But this, like, actually makes it that way you just win the game. They're also playing Barrier Statue in the deck, which we've seen a lot of people not play that. They don't play the Abyss spell in the deck, nowhere in the main or even the side deck. They just completely cut it out from the deck. And then on to the next list, because there's not really too much to say about this deck. Now we're into top 8. We have a Malice deck list, which we can see playing a bunch of Bystials, because, Bystials are ways to interact with the opponent, but they're also ways to, like, extend with your own plays. So these cards are like hand traps while also being extenders. So these cards are very strong in this deck. But then we can see like Fua, Ash, Valor, Metaltronus in main, 2 Allure, and a Gold Sark. So deciding to only play 2 Allure is interesting. They are playing 41 cards. I guess like you also don't want like too many ways to banish your Malices, because you're already playing all the Bestials, Allure, you have Field Spell, Gold Sark, doesn't play Terraforming, which I have heard that a lot of Malice players were having problems with bricking. But it's something that probably shouldn't happen too often, right? Because like look at this deck, like we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. It's like 13 names right away, and then we also play a couple Allures. So like realistically, we shouldn't be bricking that often. Like it will be something that happens, but it shouldn't happen that often. We can also see they're playing Nightmare Griffin. They're also playing Cerberus over the Nightmare Phoenix. I think it's because a lot of people saw that everyone was playing Phoenix, which meant that Cerberus... Like, okay, so if everyone plays Phoenix, right, let me get this thought out there correctly. If everyone plays Nightmare Phoenix, then you can play Chaos Hunter against this deck, because nobody's playing Cerberus. But if everyone assumes that everyone's playing Nightmare Phoenix and not Cerberus, then people might start side decking Chaos Hunter, which now your Cerberus is able to go ahead and out that. So maybe that was like the logic of them playing that. We also see Shifter in the side. They played the Thrust, D-Barrier, Sanctum, some Strikes. Interesting that they didn't decide to play more Thrust for something like D-Barrier, Sanctum. But Strike is also a very good going first card, especially in the mirror match. Strike on Link 3 is just absurd. Now we have another top 8 list, just another pure Ryzeal. We can see that they main deck Cross Out, Metaltronus, 1 Droll, 1 Nib, like cards for Cross Out. 1 Talons, played 2 Desires, 1 Pot of Prosperity. Side deck the Cowboy, side deck Soul Drain, which I think Soul Drain was also better in this deck before, because now you also have Eclipse Twins in the graveyard effect that you want to be able to activate. So I don't think you actually need Soul Drain. I think you could definitely replace this card with like a Solemn card and you'll still be good. I feel like having like the Eclipse Twin follow-up or the Mirror Logic negate, I feel like those are things that do come up, and maybe you'd want to be able to utilize those more, while when this is face up you won't be able to. They also do play the plugin. Now on for the last top 8 deck list, we can see the White Forest Fiendsmith deck. I think this deck probably caught a lot of people off guard, and they didn't know how to play against it correctly. Even in like the few videos that I posted of this deck, people just were not playing against it properly. People were using like Imperm on this, and then they'd just be like, okay, Chain Sylvie, bounce back, special summon out, still resolve this to search. So I think like they definitely got a lot of advantages off stuff like that. We also see 3 Black Goat Laughs, which is probably, it should probably just be mandatory in a deck that looks like this, because you have Witch that can discard it, you have your White Forest cards that can discard it, so you're getting like, you already need to be discarding, and then this card's just good when it's in grave. It's kind of like the Pearly deck. Like, you kind of want to have some cards that are good to discard in that deck, so that way you're getting value off of your discards. And then this card's also just like, if you don't discard it, which would really never happen, right? Then you can just like hold it in hand and use it as a trap. So I think this deck list is cool. I'm sure this is a deck that will pop up a little bit over time, and we'll continue to see it a little bit here and there. It's definitely a deck that you want to know what it does. But now on to the top 16 deck lists. We have the Ryzeal Mitsurugi deck. We can also see the main deck in Karma Cannon. Which main deck Karma Cannon, wild choice. Main deck's the trap, plays the whole Mitsurugi engine. A lot of people have cut the trap from the main deck and threw it into the side deck if they're even playing it, just because of the amount of bricks this deck has. And has a lot of awkward hands. We also see double sword in the deck to have more Ryzeal cards. This is like a pretty this isn't even like a standard deck list. This is like what the standard deck list looked like a month ago for this deck. So it looks like they're behind with the deck, but the deck is also still just so powerful where like, oh, they also only play 2 ice. Yeah, they play 2 ice, 2 sword. Yeah, this literally looks like deck list from like a month ago. The deck list does look weird overall, but the deck is very powerful. So even if the deck does look weird, still a very powerful deck and could end up winning a tournament. And there was also like, people were cutting Droll from their decks. We've still seen a decent amount of people play it, but if people are cutting Drolls from their decks, that is one very good card against this deck. Now on to the next deck list. We could also see like Drolls in this deck, but there's no Perulia, you know, so like it seems like they're choosing between one or the other in some of these lists. This is just a very standard Fiendsmith Raziel deck. They decided to play 3 Sword, 2 Talons. Yeah, there's not really much to say about this. They play 2 Requiem to help against Bystials, which I think was a very smart choice for this tournament because a lot of Europeans play a lot of Bystials, and that's been something that's been popular in their opens recently. I also played double Requiem in my extra deck for this tournament. And then we can see a Memento deck in top, what is it? It's top 16, right? Am I tripping? Yeah, this is top 16. Okay. So we can see Memento. They even side deck like Morph King. I don't even know what this card does. When this card is normal summon, especially when target one face of monster on the field, you can have special summon monsters from the extra deck except for Synchro for the rest of the turn. Also change the card to that level, and if you do, gain life points. Okay, so it's a level 1 Phoenix that's gaining life points. Fair enough. That's all I needed to read. That is all I needed to read. Yeah, they're playing just 1 Engraver for the Fiendsmith stuff. You don't need like too much Fiendsmith stuff in this deck. It does suck that like this is a brick. Now that you just play 1 Engraver, but it also allows your deck to have so much more power by playing Fiendsmith cards in your deck. And then, yeah, there's not too much more to say about this. We see more Blackout Laughs. Then on to the next deck list, we have Mitsurugi Raziel, cutting down on Mitsurugi, like no trap, cutting the Futso, which I think this is like the proper way to be playing the deck, like cutting down on those cards and probably just playing the engine exactly like this, like how they're playing it. Like this is probably exactly how I'd be playing it. We see like 2 Sword in the deck just to have more Raziel cards, which I think is fine. You know, having like more follow-up, because there are times where you go through like Sword Node and now your X doesn't have anything to search, because, you know, you weren't able to get Duo to get to Cross. So I think it is fine to play multiple Sword. And then we also see like 12 hand traps in the main with Talons called by Pot of Prosperity. Oh, more than that, my bad. 14 hand traps with the Bystials, and then Talons called by Pot of Prosperity at 43. And then just side decking all going second cards. Well, Metaltronus is going like first into the mirror, because you can like pretty much Psalm Strike their Ice Raziel. But on to the next list, we have another Memento deck list. This one is not playing the Fiendsmith cards. They are also playing Agave Dragon for time. This deck definitely has to play a time card. People will read your cards a bunch too, and try to beat the end board, and then realize they can't. So having a time card is very important for this deck. We can see like 3 Fua, 3 Imperm, Slayer in the main, Droplet, Talons. Side deck's more Sleepy. This is probably for going first, I would assume, as this is like an extender that's able to get you into your fusion stuff, you know, into your like your Twin Dragon typically, and then be able to keep going with that. And then on to the next deck list, we have a Mermail deck list, and this is now top 32. And yeah, I mean, this deck list does play the Abyss spell in it. The other one did not. They side deck more Minstrel. They side deck another Poseidra, because this card's good going second into boards. But going first is not like the greatest card ever. XYZ Encore, just, you know, a card to be able to out Abyss Dweller, because this card hurts this deck so much. And they only played 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 hand traps in their deck. And some of these aren't even like stopping Dweller. Like if you Perulia your opponent, that doesn't stop them from making Dweller. If you Fua them, that doesn't stop them from making Dweller. Like, Dominus Impulse really isn't stopping them from making Dweller a lot of the time either, unless if you're able to use this on, like, a node at the end. So you have, like, Ash Imperm, and also, like, you know, Ash on Duo can prevent them from making Dweller. It's like, a little bit weird. You know, Dweller is definitely a problem for this deck. But on to the next deck, we have Fiendsmith Bystial, which I'm pretty sure, yeah, this is Christian Uranus deck profile. Yeah, this deck is like, it's just Fiendsmith with Bystials, you know. It's like the engine is Fiendsmith, and then you have like Lubellion as more engine stuff. Then you also see something like Fenrir in the side deck, which this card going first is good. Also, I didn't even know that this card was banned in OCG, that's crazy. But yeah, this card going first is solid. You just sided in for going first alongside like Psalm Strike. And then this also makes your deck a little bit more consistent, because your deck doesn't actually have like that many starters in it. Like, you know, you have Lurie, Lacrima, Engraver, Tract, Bystial, Lubellion, plus like a hand trap works also. But then like Fenrir plus a hand trap also works. So like when you add all that together, like 3, 6, like these cards work with hand traps. And then, you know, 1, 2, 4, 7, 10. Like now you have enough, like, it's not like enough starters, but enough ways to actually attempt to play the game. So like Fenrir also does help with like attempting to play the game, which is something that you want to do, especially if you're going into a tournament that's going to be top 64. You know, you have to play like 12 rounds of Swiss and then 6 rounds of Top Cut if you want to win the tournament. Which I assume this player, you know, is trying to win the tournament. You know, not just trying to top the tournament, trying to win the tournament. And then on to a pure Ryziel list. They do play the plug-in plus cross, triple desires, no Pot of Prosperity, which I find crazy because Pot of Prosperity is such a good card at, like, you know, specifically digging for one thing that you're looking for. We also see Metaltronus with a Bawa because this allows you to be able to stop like a Bawa, DDD, technically Desiree too because it has its Fiend 28 attack, but usually the Desiree will have an attack difference on it or it can't be targeted. Yeah, so I guess like this would really never come up on Desiree the more I think about it. With this, it would only come up if it was like actually Desiree. Then we can see no time card. Yeah, just playing a bunch of hand traps. Yeah, nothing too crazy about it, like main deck cross out, side deck more cross out strike. And then Fiendsmith Ryziel. Main deck, nothing crazy in it. Main deck called by, I guess. Side deck, Meow, Chaos Hunter, Lancia. You know, more hate for Malice because that deck is just it's just a scary matchup. It's just a scary matchup. Then has like the 4 going first cards in the side deck. Put the called by in the main. Yeah, pretty standard list. Nothing crazy. Looking at the next list, we have Pure Ryziel playing triple cross, plug-in, and cross out, and talents, and small world. This player definitely could have played Desires over Small World, and they would have been fine. I think Small World's a pretty mid card. It does get you to a starter guaranteed, but Desires drawing 2 also gets you to a starter a very solid amount of the time. And then also, like, you're playing, like, triple cross, so, like, you're never banishing, like, all these off Desires or anything like that. Even if you play 2 of this, like, you're really never banishing all of them. Even if you play 1, like, I would still full send it. Like, even then, I forget the exact number, but it's like a 27% chance if you start with Desires to banish a 1-of in your deck. You do have, like, multiple 1-ofs that do kind of suck if you do that, though, but I think you just have to eat those, because Desires is just simply a better card. Then they also want to play 2 Veiler, 2 Nib, which is interesting. Okay, 2 Strike, 1 D-Barrier, which is also for Crossout, but I wonder who you're actually siding this in for, because not enough people play D-Barrier for me to want to side Crossout with D-Barrier into matchups. Now we have a Malice list. Oh, they only played 2 White Rabbit, 3 Cat. Oh, that's crazy. That is wild. The only other person I've seen cut White Rabbit down the 2 at some point was King of Flames, and that guy be making weird deck lists. Then we see Gold Sark, Field Spell, no Terraforming, no Allure Darkness. So, you know, a list like this, you know, even though it doesn't look prone to bricking, it's definitely something that can happen, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's what knocked them out of the tournament. Sometimes you just brick in this deck and it sucks. Also, they play 2 Sornier, 2 Veiler, 2 Nib, 2 Baldrake, 1 Talons. I feel like their non-engine ratio is a little bit weird. I feel like I'd want more Baldrake. This card just seems really good in a list like this because it works with, you know, Magma Mud, Druid Worm, Nib. Like, it works with multiple things. Even on the opponent's turn, like, if you go first and, you know, now you can Baldrake, banish, special summon out, and now this is also an interruption while your engine's now rolling from the Baldrake. Like, Baldrake's really strong in that spot. Now we have another Malice list playing only 2 Cat in it. 3 Baldrake. Hey, there we go. Plays Terraforming, Gold Sark, Called by, Talents playing 41 cards, no Allure Darkness. Side deck Shifter. Yeah, we're starting to see more and more people take Shifter out of the main and moving it into the side deck. Now we have a pure Ryziel deck, not really playing hand traps, just playing Ash, Imperm. Then has like Talents, Metaltronus, Slayer, Book of Moon, Harpies, Called by, Thrust. Plays 2 cross, no trap, no plug-in. So this is really just like, you know, the good Ryziel cards, you know, a couple cross, and then infinite going second cards, because this deck can slam a lot of going second cards in it. Like, this is like what? Not including like the Pot of Desires and stuff, even though like these are gonna get you to going second cards. So like there's only 15 engine, and then there's like, you know, these are like somewhat engine, but they're also just simply getting you to non-engine. Like, if I activate Pot of Prosperity, call 6, like, I will see a Talents, a Slayer, a Metaltronus, a Imperm, a Book of Moon, a Thrust, a Harpies, or a Called by, or something that'll work in that spot. We also see Garua for Ultimate Slayer in here. Yeah, played Tri Brigade. I mean, it's not the Ultimate Slayer. Like, the Ultimate Slayer is for the Tri Brigade, which will dump Garua. It's not really there for that. Then, okay, we see the plugin in the side for going first. Tons of Solemns also to be able to take out stuff like Slayer, Harpies. And then, looking at the next deck list, we have another Pure Ryziel, which I feel like we've gone over a lot of these. I feel like there's just not too much more to say in this. They do play plugin in their main deck, play Crossout in the main. We have a Mitsurugi deck, side decking the Trap, main decking Futso, playing only one sword, designed to play hand traps mainly, and then a couple talents and a called by, playing at 40 cards. Plays Ragna Zero in the deck also. Okay, Ragna Zero is a interesting choice overall. It does work with your duo drive. It works against their duo drive, but they also have to summon an attack. It does work against Dormouse too, I guess. Okay, looking at the next deck list, we have Ryziel Fiendsmith. Main deck, what? Main decking Perulia over Fua? Okay, I don't think this player owns Fua, because they also don't side deck Meow, and they don't play Fua anywhere on their deck. Yeah, I don't think this player has Fua. I think that's the reason why. If there's a different reason why, and you're this player, you know, go ahead, comment down below, Ryan, Ross, I'm curious. But looking at the next deck list, we have Tenpai. This is top 64 deck list now. We have Tenpai, Fiendsmith, Bystial, you know, the Triv deck from a little while back, from like 2 months ago, which this deck hasn't really changed too much. It's still like a decently solid deck overall. I definitely think there's better decks than it in the format. But, you know, sometimes you are able just to, like, hand trap your opponent, bait him with Fiendsmith, bait him with Bystials, and then go, like, normal Pydra, win the game. And I feel like that's, like, always how Pydra's going to be, is just, like, you know, hand trap your opponent, force the interruptions, blah, 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 and then, you know, resolve one Tenpai card and do 16,000 damage. Now, onto the next list, we have another list that looks just like that one, but only playing 2 Pydra in it to cut down the normal summons, because, you know, the deck does play a decent amount of normal summons in it. Then this player's playing, you know, more hand traps, playing 42 cards, side decking the Mirror Logic with the Slayer, Chaos Hunter, Lancia, you know, more Malice Hate. Looking at this list, we can see Perulia, Santa Claus on the side deck, which you can search off Tracked. So this player was ready to play against, like, something random like Pearly or something. Playing more Bystials than the others, playing, you know, good Tenpai, like more Tenpais. Well, not than the first list, but than the last list. Then we can see just like 12 hand traps, but plays, you know, more Bystials, and these are, you know, kind of hand traps depending on what you're playing against. Then we have another Fiendsmith Tenpai Bystial deck. This deck side decking these 6 Solemns, you know, Charmies, Lancia, doesn't play the Trident Dragon, which I feel like is a very interesting choice, because I feel like Trident Dragon definitely helps you be able to win games. But not playing it, you know, interesting choice overall. Looking at the next deck list now, we have a Mitsurugi Ryziel deck playing the Breakers, main deck Ultimate Slayer, which I feel like main deck Ultimate Slayer was a pretty popular choice in this tournament. Even I got hit with main deck Ultimate Slayer a few times throughout the tournament. And it was very interesting. I was like, alright, fair enough, main deck Ultimate Slayer. It is what it is. I lose my detonator. Yeah, then we can see like Skill Drain in the side deck, because you can just put up big bodies, set up your Mitsurugi stuff, maybe set up Trap and you win. Skill Drain is an underrated card for sure. People just think like, oh, Special X, dump Mirror Logic, out Skill Drain, but it's normally not as simple as that. I'll say that. It's normally not as simple as that to be able to out this card. Now looking at the next list, we see another Mitsurugi Ryziel deck, mainly playing the Breakers, main deck Karma Cannon, another player main decking Karma Cannon. That's very interesting. I'm not sure why these players were doing it, especially like, you know, only 2 Thrust in the list, main deck Karma Cannon, and they play Trap. I think this is the same list as earlier, so I think they both played the same list, but it's an interesting choice for sure. It's definitely an interesting choice. Then we have another Mitsurugi Ryziel deck, playing the 2 Sword, cut the Trap, played Droll, Fua, Ash, and Perm. You know, this deck can't play as many hand traps as other decks if you're playing like this engine, so, you know, playing more high impact stuff like Fua, Droll makes sense. everyone's playing Fua, but, you know, playing Droll makes sense to have more high impact type cards. Because if you're going to have less hand traps, you need your hand traps to be more impactful overall. Now we have Fiendsmith Ryziel deck, side deck Cowboy for Time, Pow Pow. Playing only one Requiem. Does play the Exceton Knight, which most people have cut this card for the second Requiem, but they decided to leave it in. Looking at the main deck, you see triple sword, one Metaltronus, some Talons. You definitely want to have like a Metaltronus on the deck list for crossout. I mean, it's not something like you have to do. It's definitely not something you have to do because odds are you're going to have to use crossout on a hand trap turn 1 anyhow. But having crossout for Metaltronus does feel good, especially if you're going up against some of these decks that have looked more like board breaker-ish. Like now you have crossout for like Metaltronus, Talons, Called By, like Fua, or like, you know, Ryziel Engine. And then now we have another Memento deck, main deck and Ultimate Slayer, Salesband, Harpies, Talons. Main deck Salesband, very interesting choice, but I guess you can thrust into it, because, you know, we are playing multiple thrust in the deck, just 2 of it though. Side deck another Salesband. Side deck this card, which is going to be a time card, I'm betting. Detach, burn 1,000, yup. Side deck's Memento, Bone back, Burial of the Different Dimension, which is good versus the Malice deck, going first or second. Being able to use this to put back their banished cards is nice. You can also use it to put back your own banished cards, but that doesn't really come up in this deck too much, I don't think, because you have like Acheron, which can go ahead and grab them back anyhow. We can also see like Dagda in the extra deck, which can get us access to Lancia. And then next list, we have a Bestial Fiendsmith deck, playing, you know, max Bestials. You know, the Fiendsmith package, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 hand traps outside of playing like the 10 Bestial hand traps, so like 25 hand traps really. Plays the Goblin Biker, Crazy Beast. M7's really good in this deck, going in the Zeus afterwards. Plays the Fenrir, no other going first cards. Plays Spooky Dogwood, which Spooky Dogwood's an interesting choice for this deck. I feel like this card's not very good in this deck. I feel like overall Spooky Dogwood's pretty bad, but specifically for this deck, I feel like it's not even that great. Like, I know you can definitely get to some grind games, but I feel like the games with this deck just wouldn't take too long, because you're just, like, going to hand trap the opponent out of the game and then Fiendsmith combo, and, you know, if you have Lubellion Regang set up, the game's definitely over at that point. Like, Regang is so broken. If you get the summon back Magma Mutt, and then you survive that turn, I feel like the win rate is just really high. Next deck, we have Fiendsmith Ryziel playing 2 sword, playing 40 cards. Main deck 2 Metaltronus. Yeah, Crossout, Slayer, Harpies. Harpies seems to be becoming more popular too. I think it's because more people are setting stuff like Metaltronus. So if something like this becomes more popular, you know, they might have Imperm, Metaltronus, Crossout. But to be fair, they would have already used Crossout. Cross. Some people are playing like the Books and Pier. So you can go ahead and Harpies and out a lot of this stuff. So maybe Harpies is something that we start seeing more too. Now we have a Malice deck. Playing triple Allure, no Terraforming, 41 cards, Ultimate Slayer in main, Metaltronus in main, you know, multiple outs to just Detonator, just boom, get rid of that card. Plays World Sea in the deck, Avermax in the deck. Okay, definitely some interesting choices here. Avermax, World Sea, definitely not standard choices. Playing Strike, Dominus Impulse on the side, Shifter inside, Dark Charmer inside. Maybe puts in Dark Charmer to side out like Mirror Logic if they don't have Ultimate Slayer in. Not 100% sure. But now on to the next deck list. We have the just the pure Ryziel deck, main decking 5 Charmies, Cross, Plugin, couple Desires, Talons, Pot of Prosperity, Strike in main. Okay, yeah, so this is we even have 2 Reaper inside, 1 Meow inside. Reaper's a card that's becoming more popular too, being able to Reaper something like Requiem. Yeah, they don't have it for Malice, but being able to stop like Requiem or Duo Drive or Detonator, whatever calls for it in that situation, being able to stop these cards or hit Fiendsmith. You know, this card is pretty solid at being able to do that. We also see another Cross in the side deck for going first. Now we have another Pure build. Side decking the Strikes this time, 2 Cross, 1 Plugin, you know, a bunch of hand traps, 3 Desires, no Pot of Prosperity. I mean, No Pot of Prosperity. Like, Pot of Prosperity does conflict with Rizio Cross, and it conflicts with Desires, but I still feel like Pot of Prosperity is very good. This player's not playing too many board breakers, so it does lose a little bit of its value, but, they still have, like, Imperm, Metaltronus, Bonfire, X. And these cards are, like, all pretty good at, like, going into a board. But now going on to the next list. Also, Pot of Prosperity post-side is really good, being able to try to grab something like Solemn Strike or Crossout. This list playing Triple Desires, Pot of Prosperity, Crossout, Metaltronus, Imperm, 2-Cross, Plug-in, playing the hand traps. Seen a lot of Pure Rizio here. A lot of Pure Rizio. Ghost Reaper in the side to be able to hit Requiem or Desiree. And you also have Metaltronus for Desiree, which means you can hit stuff like DDD, Abawa, like stuff like that randomly comes up, or, Metaltronus banish this face down, but also having Reaper for Desiree, because the opponent, even if you stop Requiem, I guess there's still times where they're able to get the Trap Engrave, like if you were to play against, like, the Christian Uranus deck, where you were playing the Bestial Fiendsmith, maybe you just go ahead and Reaper Desiree, go ahead and get that out of the game, but, maybe you also just still hit Requiem. It's not something I've thought about too much, but, like, it's another option that you have now. Now we have Bank 1W's Rizio deck list, which is playing Traptrix cards in it, because Rafflesia is a pretty good card. This card is very solid. Like, if you have Rafflesia plus Duo, you also have to Imperm Duo on summon and not on the effect, otherwise they can chain Rafflesia, dump Plasma Hole, chain Plasma Hole effect to go ahead and overlay in the Eclipse Twins Resolve Duo by detaching off this. Like, that is something to think about. I don't know if that's something that he was doing necessarily, but he also has Gravedigger's Trap Hole and Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare, which, like, something about, like, playing a package like this is it becomes a lot weaker once it's known. But the fact that, like, it wasn't known going into that weekend, like, people weren't playing around Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare when they had Rafflesia, I guarantee you. Like, he was just using this and going, I'll stop Requiem effect, and they were probably shook. Like, they were not expecting that. Like, almost guaranteed they were not expecting that. We can also see Inscription in the side, Cycle Reader in the side, which I think Cycle Reader makes more sense in a deck list like this than, like, a Fiendsmith Rizio deck, because in Fiendsmith Rizio, Magnuma and the Druid's Worm gives you multiple bodies while outing stuff, while in a deck like this, you actually don't even want to have the Bestial on your board, because it conflicts with your X Rizio. And also in this deck, you're always trying to start with X Rizio, which I guess doesn't really matter for this discussion, but when you're going first, you always start with X Rizio, not Ice Rizio, which does make your matchup into Fua a lot better. So that is also something to consider when playing this deck, is that you're much better into a card like Fua. Now we have the Bestial Malice deck. Nothing too crazy here. 2 Dominus Impulse in the main. Side deck's another one. Plays the Goblin Crazy Beast because they play a lot of Bestials in the deck. Side deck's a Phantasme. Sure, I guess you can also search that off Bestial Magnuma too. It's like something cool. That happens to be like a little bit of synergy, something that's not really going to come up, but something that could come up. Looking at another list, we have 3 more lists to go over. We have Reaper with Requiem in the deck, playing Pure, Plug-in, Double Cross, Cross Out. Doesn't side deck anymore going first cards, no more Cross Out, no more Strike, nothing like that, which is interesting. I feel like maybe you would want to have more of these type cards, because stopping Duo really hurts this deck, so if you have Cross Out to be able to prevent them from being able to, like, Imperm Duo drive, that's really good. And then now we have another Pure list. This list is playing no Desires in it, 3 Cross, couple Small World, which I really do think Small World is just bad. I don't really agree with this card. It's just, it costs too much to use, is how it feels like to me. They play 2 Valor, 2 Nib. They play Strike, D-Barrier, maybe for Crossout, because it's a one-of, but like I said, I don't think we saw enough D-Barrier in any of these lists to really justify Crossout D-Barrier. And then you have to put this card in, like, going second, which it can just be really bad in those matchups, too. Maybe if you, like, draw D-Barrier, hand traps plus Engine, and you hand trap them out of the game, or at least enough, and then you break their board, and then you D-Barrier, like the Mirror Match, sure, it's fine. But now for the very last list, we have the Crystron deck, which I have seen this list, and something that I thought was cool in the deck, is that, first of all, we're playing Title. This is something that OCG was doing, being able to, like, discard Crystron, dump Crystron, getting a lot of Crystrons into rotation. We also see Poseidra, which you can send a water to summon it out, and then use the effect to dump an Atlantean from the deck, target a card the opponent controls, return it to hand. So you play 2 of this because you have to be able to dump an Atlantean, so you have to dump the other one. So you summon this, dump 1, and then bounce 1. So I thought this card was like kind of cool. I don't know how like good it is, but it is like a very cool option for this deck that I wasn't really thinking about. This is something that we'll probably see in like future formats too at some point, where non-Atlantean decks are playing Poseidra, assuming that like they're water decks. We can also see Dark Strike Fighter for time. You definitely want to have something for time. Playing a deck like this too, like people are going to be reading your cards a bunch, so it's very good to be prepared for that. Even if you're playing a deck that they're not having to read the cards bunch for, I think it's always good to have a time card. But playing a deck like this, definitely would want a time card, like 100%. And I think with all that being said, that is going to be it for the video. That is all the publicly available top 64 deck lists. I will also most likely be recording a deck profile with the player that got second place in this tournament playing Malice Bestial. So I should have their deck profile up on my channel within the next 2 days or something like that. Hopefully I'm able to do that, and if I am, you will see that up on the channel. And with that being said, the DB Grinder signing off. Peace, have a nice day, stay safe.